The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Well, you know how Democrats have been jumping up and down demanding full release of the records regarding pedophile and child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein? Actually, when you look at it, Senator Dick Durbin, who's been the loudest demanding release of the list, moved in the U.S. Senate to block release of the list roughly 2 years ago. This whole thing is an act. Now, of course, in Florida, U.S. District Court Judge Robin Rosenberg, a Trump era appointee, pardon me, an Obama era appointee, appointed by President Barack Obama, has blocked the Department of Justice's request to unseal the grand jury testimony that would shed the most light on Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile ring. Rosenberg claimed that grand jury secrecy rules forced her to keep the testimony sealed. But because Epstein is dead, is a serious legal question as to whether he has a continued right to privacy that is greater than the right of the public to know. Now, the grand jury testimony we're talking to has to do with the federal grand juries in Florida from 2005 and 2007 who looked into Epstein's pedophile ring. The end result of this, of course, was Epstein's sweetheart deal, where he got a slap on the wrist of only 18 months in prison, of which he only served 15. And he's the only person in the history of Florida convicted of a sex crime, to go and allowed to serve his sentence in the new air-conditioned wing of the Palm Beach County Jail rather than a relatively harsh state penitentiary. In fact, Epstein's deal only required him to be in jail from 10 o'clock at night until 6 o'clock in the morning every day, 7 days a week. Otherwise, he was free to go wherever he wished. Now, Attorney General Pam Bondi has another chance to make public the information about Epstein's pedophile operation. But let's be very clear. A Democrat judge has blocked the disclosure that the American people are demanding, and the Trump Justice Department is seeking. Now, Attorney General Pam Bondi has another shot at the ball. The DOJ has asked two federal judges in New York to unseal the grand jury transcripts against Epstein and his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell. It was the Trump administration that prosecuted Epstein in 2019 on two counts. The first count being the act of committing child sex trafficking, the other count being conspiring to engage in child sex trafficking. The Justice Department has also sought the search warrants for Jeffrey Epstein's palatial Manhattan home, which I believe is the single most expensive single family piece of real estate in Manhattan, as well as the search warrant for his Little St. James Island. So it's the Trump administration that continues to work on getting accurate information on the Epstein pedophile ring out to the public while combating fake news and disinformation. The Democrats' sudden desire to have everything Jeffrey Epstein unsealed does not match the record. The judge who denied the American people the records in Florida is a Democrat appointed by Biden, and the two judges in New York who are considering whether to release the New York grand jury testimony and the search warrants are also both Democrats. Does anybody want to bet how this comes out? I have a feeling that I know. The point, of course, here is that the records pertaining to Epstein have been largely under the control of the prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, which is a hotbed of Trump-hating leftist Democrat politicized prosecutors, and the New York office of the FBI, also not friends to the Trump administration. Therefore, there's a high probability that this data has been salted with what we call poison pills. In other words, they could have inserted in here any false information that seeks to accuse President Donald Trump of wrongdoing. We have a perfect example of this, the Wall Street Journal leading the way to perpetrate the Epstein hoax as far as it pertains to President Donald Trump. I'm sorry, I've known Trump for 50 years. I think I'm the first person in the country to urge him to make a serious bid for the presidency. And the so called birthday card, which is not handwritten but typed and signed by Donald Trump. Let me ask you a question. Who types out a birthday card? The answer is no one. Doesn't even sound like Trump. There's a handwritten drawing. I've known him 50 years. I've never seen him doodle or draw anything. Folks, this is a fugazi. And it's a perfect example of why the records must be somewhat suspect. But we do know, if you read my 2015 book, The Clintons' War on Women, the longest chapter in the book is entitled Orgy Island. It is a deep dive on Jeffrey Epstein, and we reveal there, using his little black book, which was first reported by Nick Bryant at Gawker, as well as the FAA manifest that tells you everybody who flew on Epstein's plane and where they flew, that those who were going to the island were largely Democrats. Bill Clinton, former Governor Bill Richardson, former U.S. Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell of Maine, Bill Gates. This is not a cabal of Republicans or Trump supporters. Let us pray that the judges in New York do the right thing and release this grand jury testimony. If not, it'll be very clear that what we have here is a Democrat cover up of the facts regarding Jeffrey Epstein. Now, of course, Tulsi Gabbard has stepped into the breach. She is the director of national intelligence, and she's released documents showing that the Russians had damaging information about Hillary Clinton leading into the 2016 presidential election, but refused to disclose it to the public. More shockingly, she has released documents that demonstrate that the entire Russian collusion hoax was orchestrated by President Barack Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, National Security Advisor Susan Rice, FBI Director James Comey, and of course the famous CIA Director John Brennan. Let's point out that Donald Trump knew from the beginning that his campaign had been spied on by the deep state. Remember this exchange with Leslie Stahl?
So the biggest scandal was when they spied on my campaign. They spied on my campaign.
There's no real evidence of that.
Of course there is.
No.
It's all over the place. Leslie,
Sir,
they spied on my campaign and they got caught.
Can I say something? You know, this is 60 Minutes, and we can't put on things we can't verify.
You won't put it on because it's bad for Biden.
We can't
Look,
put on things we can't verify.
Leslie, they spied on my campaign.
Well, we can't verify
It's been totally
that.
verified.
No.
It's been, just go down and get the papers. They spied on my campaign, they got caught.
No.
And then they went much further than that, and they got caught. And you will see that, Leslie, and you know that, but you just don't want to put it on the air.
As a matter of fact, I don't know that.
Okay.
Well, now we definitively do know that because Tulsi Gabbard has brought the receipts, releasing numerous classified documents, deeply hidden previous to this, that demonstrate conclusively that Barack Obama orchestrated the entire Russian collusion hoax. We learned from CIA Director John Radcliffe only days ago that John Brennan, the psychopath who was the head of the CIA, pushed to include the phony Steele dossier in the intelligence community briefing for President Barack Obama so they could use it as the rationale to launch Crossfire Hurricane. That's the FBI effort to try to smear President Donald Trump, and of course to justify the appointment of Robert Mueller so he could conduct his witch hunt. Now we also learn that Tulsi Gabbard had additional documents because the Russians, according to classified documents, knew that Hillary Clinton suffered from intensified psycho-emotional problems, was taking heavy tranquilizers. They knew she had medical conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, COPD, deep vein thrombosis, and chronic fatigue. They also knew that Obama and Democrat officials found her health condition to be extraordinarily alarming, and they knew Clinton attempted to bribe religious leaders with taxpayer money in order to gain their support. Let's listen to Tulsi Gabbard.
We will be releasing further documents tomorrow that will refute that statement. And I would go back and point to, and we will be pulling a whole host of statements that were made by the Obama administration, by Hillary Clinton, by senior Democrat officials, by their friends in the media that state over and over again after this January 2017 manufactured intelligence document was created that repeat the narrative. And I'm looking at my notes here. New York Times says Russian hackers acted to aid Trump in the election. Obama's CIA Director John Brennan says there is strong consensus among us to support the CIA claim Russian hackers aided Donald Trump's election. Hillary Clinton said, I would be president if not for the Russian hackers supporting Donald Trump. So there is a vast body of evidence and intelligence that debunks and refutes this statement you've just read and others coming from some of the Democrat leaders in Congress today.
Now, that was, of course, yesterday. Barack Obama, in a very rare statement, has defended himself by pointing to the bipartisan U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee report, which once again claimed Russian collusion. I can tell you firsthand that report is a steaming pile of BS. Every reference to me, every single reference to me, and there's a couple, is categorically false. This is a cut and paste job in which any unproven claim about Donald Trump and Russia is included in the report as if it is a fact. And the three Republicans on the committee at the time were all never Trumpers, Trump haters. Senator Richard Burr, driven from the U.S. Senate because he couldn't get reelected based on his opposition to Donald Trump. Strangely enough, Marco Rubio, who I think is a changed man, was also on this committee. So in response, Obama is trying to hide behind the Senate Intelligence Committee report, but I don't think that is going to hold water. Here's Donald Trump speaking about Tulsi Gabbard's valiant act.
Director of National Intelligence. Oh, where's Tulsi? She's like hotter than everybody. She's the hottest one in the room right now because she found out with certainty. I think we knew it before, in all fairness, Tulsi, but now you have certainty. She has all the documents. She has everything that you need. And she found out that Barack Hussein Obama led a group of people and they cheated in the elections, and they cheated without question. It's not even a would you say there's even a little question there, Tulsi? She says no. And you found things that nobody thought we'd ever find. And I'm very happy and very honored to have you with us. She's right now, by far, Speaker, she's hotter than you right now, Speaker. She's the hottest person in the room right now, Speaker. So, Tulsi, great job. And I know you have a lot more coming. She told me you've seen nothing yet. So I heard those rumors about you, but now I know they're true. So we're very proud of you, Tulsi.
There you have it. President Donald Trump standing up for the valiant actions of Tulsi Gabbard. You're listening to the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. Whatever you do, please don't touch that dial because we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has fully exposed the deep state plot to use the full authority of the U.S. government to try to undo the election of a duly elected president. And she keeps on bringing it. Let's listen to Tulsi Gabbard again.
At President Trump's direction and with the support and coordination with the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford, today we've released a declassified Oversight Majority Staff report that was produced in September of 2020. The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic and American voters having faith that the votes cast will count. There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016. They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a years-long coup against him and his administration. We're here today because the American people deserve the truth, they deserve accountability, and they deserve justice.
So it's on, folks. And now the question will be, since Tulsi Gabbard has announced she has made a criminal referral against Barack Obama and others to the Department of Justice and to Attorney General Pam Bondi, whether we have a two-tiered justice system in this country where people like General Flynn and Donald Trump and, yes, Roger Stone are prosecuted for crimes that never actually really happened, or whether Barack Obama and his cabal of deep state traitors are going to be held responsible. This is a fundamental question regarding the future of this country. We either do have a fair, balanced judicial system, or we do not. This is not about retaliation. It is not about revenge. It is about rebalancing the scales of justice and bringing people who engaged in treasonous activity to try to steal an American election will be held responsible. For those who say, well, we can't prosecute a former American president. They tried to put Donald Trump in jail. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to keep him off the ballot in 50 states. So that is the standard. They created the standard. And therefore, I pray that Barack Hussein Obama, who is now completely proved was the head of this conspiracy, is brought to justice. You're listening to the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone, and we'll be right back with more. We're going to look at John Brennan, the CIA director and former communist, and his role in all of this.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And you are once again entering the Stone Zone. New examination on the role of former CIA Director John Brennan. Now, Mr. Brennan is a admitted communist. He admitted that in a polygraph test. He voted for the Communist Party candidate for president in 3 elections. He was a member of the Communist Party. This is the same John Brennan who, as the CIA station chief in Riyadh, signed the visas for 4 of the 8 Saudi hijackers who attacked America on 9/11. This is the same John Brennan who got caught red-handed spying on a U.S. Senate investigative committee that was looking into his use of illegal torture as the CIA director. Once again, the same John Brennan, who former FBI counterintelligence officer John Guandolo insists converted to radical Islam, Wahhabism specifically, during the time that he served the CIA in Saudi Arabia. Now, of course, one of the tenets of Wahhabism is that you can lie if it furthers the goals and the commitment to Allah. And there's no question that Mr. Brennan is a liar. One of the documents declassified by the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, shows that the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence found that the intelligence community had no direct information showing that Russian President Vladimir Putin sought to replace Donald Trump in his role as U.S. president. In fact, the committee did find that former President Barack Obama acted in an unusual manner with his bureaucrats, publishing potentially biased and implausible evidence to paint a picture that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin were in cahoots despite a total lack of evidence. This report was prepared in 2020 when Adam Schiff, Watermelon Head or Pencil Neck, take your pick, was the chair of the Select Committee on Intelligence. So this was hardly a bipartisan report. The committee implicates former CIA Director John Brennan for including the famously fake Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment that was presented to Barack Obama that led to the Russiagate investigation, knowing that it was based on internet rumor. John Brennan knew the Steele dossier, which was a report that claimed that falsely that Donald Trump had cavorted with Russian prostitutes while visiting Moscow as a private businessman and had been entertained when those prostitutes allegedly urinated on a bed that President Rock slept in, completely and totally fabricated, actually paid for by Hillary Clinton's campaign. They didn't report it that way in their Federal Election Commission reports. They disguised it as legal fees. They were later caught and paid a fine to the FEC for that. But Brennan knew this was false. Andrew Weissman, who was the de facto head of the Mueller witch hunt, conceivably the single most corrupt prosecutor in U.S. history, man who got his start covering up mob murders, who responsible for the prosecutorial misconduct, which destroyed the Enron case, a case where he won a stunning legal victory, only to have it unanimously overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. He knew back to his days as the general counsel of the FBI that the so-called Steele dossier was a fraud, but nonetheless, it was used as the rationale, it was used as the probable cause for the opening of the Crossfire Hurricane FBI operation to take down Donald Trump. The ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, was also rushed to get it done and rubber stamped before Trump could get in office. These revelations are painting the picture of a conspiracy against Trump that can no longer be denied by anyone. My question, quite simply, is: are those reporters at the Washington Post and the New York Times who were given Pulitzer Prizes for their stunning revelations regarding the Russian collusion in America's election, will they be required to give those awards back? Because, quite frankly, well, they should. More importantly, though, the FBI has taken action to make sure that the perps do not escape justice. I've said here in the Stone Zone multiple times that it doesn't matter how compelling the evidence is. It doesn't matter how overwhelming the proof may be. No Trump supporter, no Republican, no free thinker can get a fair trial in the District of Columbia, and no Democrat quisling, including those who ran this grand conspiracy, will ever be convicted. Every judge in the D.C. district is a rabid Trump hating partisan. In my case, they said that I had to stand trial in front of Judge Amy Berman Jackson because they said my case was related to a case that Mueller had brought against 17 Russians that he claimed, without producing any evidence, had hacked the DNC. And the prosecutors told the judge that they would produce evidence against Stone that was gleaned from search warrants in that case. But they never did, because there is none. So in essence, they were able to judge shop to ensure that I got the most hateful judge, a judge who ignored exculpatory evidence. Robert Mueller's final report, which wasn't released until election night of 2020, and then only by the order of a federal judge on page 178, very clearly states that they had found no evidence, that there was a factual barrier to prosecution against me because they found no evidence of Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaboration, or any other crime. But it doesn't matter if Obama and Biden and Rice and Brennan and Comey and Rosenstein and the rest of these people are indicted in D.C. They'll walk. Now, FBI Director Kash Patel has opened up a grand conspiracy probe that will prevent Democrats and deep state officials from hiding behind statute of limitation loopholes to skirt justice. You'll recall that Special Counsel John Durham, appointed by Trump Attorney General Bill Barr, was appointed to get to the bottom of this Russian collusion question. Why did he take 5 long years when journalists like Lee Smith and John Solomon and many others told us what we later learned to be true in Durham's report? That's because they were trying to ride out the statute of limitations so that Hillary Clinton and John Podesta and Susan Rice and Cheryl Mills and James Comey, the FBI director, John Brennan, and the rest of the cabal would not face justice. See, the FBI hopes to connect these activities of the deep state in initially fomenting Russiagate all the way through Special Prosecutor Jack Smith's special investigation probe, arguing that these criminal actions were all concocted as part of a larger coordinated conspiracy. That would allow them to avoid the 5 year statute of limitations. They have a very strong case, according to criminal defense lawyer David Schoen, who I ran this by the other evening. It's becoming more and more apparent as Tulsi Gabbard is releasing more and more actual classified documents that lay this conspiracy bare. Actually, according to an analysis from John Solomon, who I just mentioned, President Trump must now declassify and annex to the years old Inspector General investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server, as well as the Clinton plan intelligence from Russiagate Special Counsel John Durham. Those are both still sealed. It is time for full disclosure. If those are unsealed, or if they, pardon me, declassified, this will give the grand conspiracy case real legs. The declassification of these documents would open them up to be considered by a grand jury who could then determine whether they were used in the conspiracy to frame Trump, which they were. These disclosures will tie everything together that FBI Director Kash Patel needs to ensure that no Democrat or deep state operative is spared from justice. Meanwhile, my good friend, Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte, he was on with Laura Ingraham last night. I couldn't stop laughing. It was so hysterical. Pulte's been in the home building and construction business his entire life. Pulte Homes is one of the most famous construction companies in the country. He went down to take a firsthand look at the $2.5 billion renovation of the palatial headquarters of the Federal Reserve and the plush offices of Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. Donald Trump knows this because he was a builder, but so is Bill Pulte. It's virtually impossible to spend $2.5 billion, and more troubling, Chairman Powell of the Federal Reserve appears to have lied under oath to a Senate committee investigating this profligate federal spending. Specifically, he said that the renovation plan does not include a private elevators for the Fed governors, does not include a private dining room, does not include any new marble or new fountains, does not include an incredible roof garden. But unfortunately, looking at the plans, which can be found online, all of those things are false. In other words, he lied to Congress, but unlike me, who they claim lied to Congress, there was nothing to hide. My misstatements were inadvertent, but more importantly, they were immaterial. There was no Russian collusion to hide. There was nothing to cover up. So when the judge in my case, in blistering me in sentencing, said I covered up for Donald Trump, her words, covered up what? The Russian collusion? There was none. It was a fraud. Now, Federal Housing Agency Director Pulte, along with White House Deputy Chief of Staff James Blair, and Trump's budget director, Russ Vought, will be visiting the Federal Reserve tomorrow to investigate the $2.5 billion investigations. Renovations are being conducted under the watch of embattled Jerome Powell. The part about this that gets me the most, of course, is that the Federal Reserve is supposed to use two criteria in deciding where to set the interest rates: inflation and unemployment. Based on those numbers today, it's time to cut interest rates on the American people. Those trying to pay a credit card or buy a house or buy a car or any other consumer product. The current inflation index and the current unemployment numbers are either at the same level or lower than they were the last four times the Federal Reserve cut interest rates the very last time or next to last time in order to try to benefit the election of the Democrat nominee for president that turned out to be Kamala Harris. Uh, Ponti has been particularly effective as a bulldog here, relentlessly pounding Powell, not only over his misuse of funds, but also because he refuses to cut rates on the American people. At the same time, he is himself trying to build him a Taj Mahal. It is absolutely outrageous. Nobody I know in the construction business believes you can spend $2.5 billion in this kind of renovation. But now we learn that the entire project has a 40% cost overrun. So while the average American can't borrow at a reasonable interest rate, we have Jerome Let 'em eat cake Powell making his headquarters a showplace. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who was on this show only last week, who I met with this morning here in Washington, D.C., made a criminal referral on Powell for his alleged perjury before a Senate committee. Powell has frequently caught the ire of President Trump for his manipulation of interest rates. Powell has kept the interest rates artificially high to punish Donald Trump over his use of tariffs. But that's because Powell and his allies have insisted that demanding fair tariff arrangements with our trading partners would drive inflation sky high. But it hasn't. The inflation rate remains low. The dollar remains stable. Unemployment is at low levels. All of those things indicate a cut in interest rates that Jerome Powell refuses to produce for the American people. It's Powell who's playing political games with the prosperity of the American people. It's only a matter of time before he leaves his position, probably in disgrace. With Bill Pulte on the case, hopefully it will be sooner rather than later. This is a story that's not going to go away. I know Bill Pulte. This guy is single-minded. He is relentless. He's been pounding on Jay Powell, fighting for lower interest rates for the American people. President Donald Trump gave him a shout out on Truth Social. I guess it was Sunday, maybe it was Monday, about what a great job that he's doing, and I concur. All right, so you're in the Stone Zone with me, Roger Stone, here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. We're breaking down the news of the day. Coming up, Tulsi Gabbard has now ordered the release of the records in the control of the National Archives regarding to the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King. We'll be talking about that when we come back. Also coming up, the release of documents pertaining to the murder of New York Senator Robert F. Kennedy on the night of his greatest political triumph when he won the 1968 California Democrat presidential primary in California. It's all coming up next right here in the Stone Zone, so please stick with us and please don't even think about touching that dial.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome. We're back in the Stone Zone. I actually saw the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, yesterday, very briefly. She is certainly a busy woman. In between exposing Obama as the architect of the Russian collusion hoax, she has now just ordered the release of the documents pertaining to the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King, shedding more light on the federal government's role in his assassination. Let me point out that the King family brought a civil suit against the FBI, the Secret Service, and the Memphis Police Department and they won, which means that a civil court judge ruled that all of those governmental agencies were directly involved in the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King. The truth is that J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director, had Dr. King wiretapped, and in a conversation, Dr. King was overheard telling one of his aides, Hosea Williams, that he had decided to endorse Robert F. Kennedy Sr. for president in the Democrat contest. A day later, Senator Kennedy, speaking to a student audience in California, was asked whether, if he was elected president, he would reopen the investigation into his brother's murder, and he fatefully said yes. How long do you think it took J. Edgar Hoover to get that audio tape on President Lyndon Johnson's desk? Gabbard said that in a press release, the American people have waited 60 years to see the full scope of the federal government's investigation into Dr. King's assassination. Now, under President Trump's leadership, we are ensuring that no stone is left unturned in our mission to deliver complete transparency on this pivotal and tragic event in our nation's history. The Trump administration deserved a great deal of credit, in my opinion, for steadily putting out crucial information, whether it is about the murder of President John F. Kennedy, the murder of his brother, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, or Dr. Martin Luther King. I only wish that the president's order for full disclosure included the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan. Ultimately, I'd like to see a more in-depth investigation of the 2 known assassination attempts against President Donald Trump. While we're at it, the Trump administration is really fighting the unethical behavior of the deep state here throughout generations of its existence. Here's a matter that warms my heart. The Wall Street Journal has been given the boot from President Trump's press pool after the News Corp-owned agency printed a dubious report about the relationship between Trump and the deceased pedophile and child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. The Wall Street Journal claimed that Trump penned a birthday note of sorts to Epstein, but failed to provide any real substantiating evidence to back this claim. As a result, President Trump announced that he was suing the Wall Street Journal, the News Corp, and their owner, Rupert Murdoch. You remember him. He's the guy who gave a $2 million advance to Governor Ron DeSantis to get him to run for president, a $2 million advance for a book that sold about $15,000 worth of copies. This is the same Rupert Murdoch who told Tucker Carlson that he would fund his campaign if Carlson would challenge his friend Donald Trump. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed that the Wall Street Journal reporters were not allowed on Air Force One to cover President Trump's upcoming trip to Scotland. That Trump is not playing nice with the fake news, nor should he. The Epstein hoax that the Wall Street Journal put on Trump is despicable, and they deserve to pay a hefty price for their irresponsibility and this outrageous smear. Thanks for joining us here on the Stone Zone.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?